Right. Good evening. My name is Latavia Smith, and I'm 26 years old. I'm a graduate of Shepherd University, and I'm a kindergarten teacher for Loudoun County. And most importantly, I was born here, raised here, and I still live here. So I stand before you today to make you aware of the possible danger of my family's history, the Boyd Carter Cemetery, or as others know it, the Kernersville Methodist Cemetery. It's an African-American cemetery, and it's in grave danger, no pun intended. It's a part of my community and our community, and I alone can trace back to 5 generations of my family that were buried there, both enslaved and free. And 2 of those great Americans are my great-uncle Ed, who served and protected in the Korean War, and my great-great-grandfather, who served in World War I. These final resting places deserve to be protected, and with the help of some archaeological friends and ground penetration, we've found bodies that date back to before the deed, and the deed goes back to 1902. And those bodies even lay outside of the boundaries that are stated on Granny Smith Lane in Kernersville, some literally 6 inches from the road. So my main concerns about the land was that no officials had really spoken publicly or even acknowledged the cemetery. And I'm here today to urgently request that someone or anyone on the commission just assist me, my family, friends, and volunteers in helping keep this Jefferson County African-American historic site protected. So the tax map shows that the boundaries are at 50% of the actual size, and Mountaineer Gas is showing that the cemetery is at 30% of its actual size. And the workers that have been out there at the construction site near the property have not only cut down trees within the property lines, they've placed stakes in the cemetery that label PL, and even sectioned off 5 feet into the cemetery, claiming relatives outside of the 5-foot mark. And those being cut out of the cemetery include my great-great-great-grandfather. So I just wanted to know what permission they had to disturb the cemetery. And we've been in touch with our state delegates, the State Historic Preservation Office, city council members, the sheriff, Rockwell, Mountaineer Gas, and the Department of Highways. 3 of those mentioned were served by letter. And everyone has passed the baton to the next company or the next official, and I've got nothing but a runaround. So we don't need anyone to look into it or make some calls anymore. We would like to just have the boundaries of our cemetery recognized and respected. And we would like to request a stop work order to be issued to investigate the rest of the human remains that are out there outside of the walls. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, no applauding.
Hi, good evening. I really don't have a speech prepared because I was just a backup team for Latavia, but I would like to speak. So I'm sure that you all have gotten my email and you've read it. I realize that your attorneys have probably told you not to respond to emails, and that's wise. But that's also bad too, because your silence speaks volumes on this. And this issue is not just a Rockwell issue. This is much larger than Rockwell. We have a group of individuals that needs our help desperately. And we cannot stand by and watch African American history be erased. And this is what's happening, and it's happening everywhere. And so this is why I can actually sit here and firmly say that this is racism, is what's occurring here. Because we see these patterns and behaviors happening in other places. And they should be afforded the same protection that a white cemetery would get in the same time and research that a white cemetery would get. And so this is why this is much larger than just Rockwell, Mountaineer Gas. So if you can, I don't know what you can do, just coming out and saying, I support protecting and preserving the Boyd Carter Cemetery would speak volumes. Thank you.
Kirsten Lee.
If it weren't for the timing of this meeting, this room would be packed. As it is, a great number of the people who are appalled and disgusted with the situation at the Boyd Carter Cemetery are at the community action I just left. A great many of them have also given more time than they can afford this week, as in so many others, trying to make our county a better place, a place envisioned in the 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Like so many issues our county faces, the desecration of this cemetery transcends politics. It's a moral, legal, and humanitarian issue. You've been briefed in previous meetings, so I know you're aware of what's been going on. Since then, Rockwell has placed property markers in the cemetery, encompassing dozens of marked and unmarked graves. What communications are occurring with the descendants? How will the deceased be treated? Mountaineer Gas has cut down a number of trees and let them fall into the cemetery, as well as leaving half-cut trees which could fall at any moment, destroy headstones, and hurt or kill visitors. Will they be held accountable for the destruction that they're causing? What kind of oversight is occurring through these processes? Rockwool and Mountaineer Gas have proven again and again that they cannot be trusted to self-regulate. How much longer will the health, desires, and rights of Jefferson County residents be ignored in favor of private corporations? Please, stop turning your backs in a blind eye. Investigate the legalities being breached. Take action to make things right, starting with the deceased and their descendants. Search your own humanity. Step up to the plate. Fight for the county described in the comprehensive plan and for the constituents who entrusted you with that responsibility. Thank you.
Addison Reese.
The recent actions taken by Rockwell and Mountaineer related to the Boyd Carter Kearneysville Methodist Cemetery are egregious. I personally talked to individuals from SHPO, DEP, PSC, and even Mountaineer, and everyone who I talked to, every person, said that they thought that Mountaineer would want to work with the descendants to move where they were putting the pipeline from the back of the cemetery due to possible slave burials and poorly marked graves. The last person I talked to was Tom Westfall of Mountaineer, and he was the opposite of everyone else, and he said they would be careful and they'd watch for bones. That was supposed to be reassuring, I guess. And he said it was just too late because they'd have to go back to the DEP and Rockwell. So actually my final call was to Rockwell. And the next thing we knew, the next 2 days, they worked until past 10:30 at night to trench up the entire road and put in the pipeline, basically before we could stop them. So they have cut out many trees that protected the view shed. Mountaineer also was letting trees fall into the cemetery, and like Kirsten said, there were 2 trees that were large, healthy trees cut almost all the way through, tilting toward the cemetery, waiting to fall. And I called the police, but they visited, and I guess it wasn't enough for them to take them out. I'm not sure why not, but so then in the midst of all this, Rockwell came in and put PL markers, which is property line, and I talked to Bjorn Anderson, I think his last name, and Peter Regenberg, and asked them what their intention was with marking off these areas that then have over a dozen graves there. And they didn't really answer to that, but they just said, this is our property. That was the answer. So one of those markers is even in the middle of a headstone for Lillian and Carter Campbell, who were buried 90 years before Rockwell came. So then it's kind of, tells you that a company's coming in and saying, well, that's my property now. What is their intention? That's what we need to know. What is their intention behind coming into a cemetery and sticking these things in the ground and saying, this is our property, when there are clearly burials there? It is ridiculous. And so basically, I think that it would be great if you guys could write a letter of support for these families in this cemetery so that Rockwell Mountaineer is pretty much done their damage, but that Rockwell doesn't do any more damage, because what I see is them slowly coming in and then trying to move it, and we've seen that happen before.